this recollection of how you showed up at companies and things like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing more stabilizing than having someone who is there with you give you their perspective.
Yeah.
Like,
and how terrible it was.
or just how nuanced it was. I'd rather how
Nuanced.
nuanced it was.
It's very generous. All right, I shrunk my head for you.
Can you
Is that better?
Can you take it down another notch?
I don't know. That's as far as it goes.
I'll just lean in. There we go.
So, I mean, you've got the Superman look now.
What is the Superman look?
With the red and the blue?
Oh, I guess that is. Yeah, I didn't get that reference.
Yeah, I feel like you should have like a sport jacket on over it, and then
no. I think of this as the Amish look. Is the way I think of it.
Why? Because of the red suspenders or the blue shirt or both?
Yeah, or both. Yeah, it's that Amish look.
Oh, and you were a Pennsylvania guy, right?
I am a Pennsylvania guy.
Oh yeah.
I grew up. I didn't wear suspenders growing up on the farm. Now every Mennonite. So we were surrounded by Mennonites and Amish, and they all the men did. But now I know why. It just gives you that extra sense of room and maneuverability. Oh my God. Did you get that movement there? That little
yeah, I did. I did. I'm not sure that's an ethical topic to be discussing, Robert.
It probably is not ethical, Josh. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
Is it?
Is that a segue? Is that a segue in the life?
It was very ham-handed, right? Just very. It wasn't delicate. It wasn't smooth.
It wasn't smooth at all.
It was a sledgehammer.
and you're normally the maestro of smooth segues.
I try.
You usually did not that time, but
no, that time. Yeah, no, definitely not.
So Metacasters, not to be so subtle. So Josh and I were talking, what's our topic for today? And it came in. It's worth reading it quickly to set the stage. So this came in from a listener, everyone.
Which we love, by the way.
Absolutely. So it's Jeff Cadell, with a C. And he says, "Hi, Bob. I'm a huge fan of you and your sidekick, Josh Anderson."
I'm not a sidekick.
I may be embellishing here just a little.
Okay.
No, I'm a big fan of the Metacasts, etc. The Agile Manifesto has 4 values, 12 principles. Scrum has 5 values, 3 pillars. Great stuff. Eliminated a lot of stupidity. We Agile types can hold our heads high that we're so much smarter than the old school command and control types. We try to. After about my 10th year as a Scrum Master, I felt something was missing, like a 6th Scrum value called ethics. Why didn't Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber make that a 6th value? Did they consider it and then said, nah, we want the military and money grubbers to embrace Scrum, so let's just quietly leave out ethics? Would the world be better off if we also encourage developers to consider whether the stuff they're building is going to benefit society, humankind, the planet? I think so. Don't pat yourself on the back just yet if you're an awesome Agilist. There are difficult questions we ought to be asking ourselves and asking our leaders to wrestle with. I love where this went. About 10 years ago, I witnessed during a live company all hands, an engineer asked the CEO of our 90,000 employee company, Fortune 500 company, whether we should be selling surveillance software to China. My colleague and I lost our shit. It was so uncomfortable. But that engineer had some courage, I'll tell you. Would you and Josh consider devoting a Metacast episode to this question? I'd love to hear what you guys discuss it. So I know that was long-winded, Metacasters, but it gives you the context. Josh, why don't you go?
Well, the answer
let's just start surrounding it.
Certainly, yes, we will take that on. One of the things that I'm going to make wild assumptions here, because I don't know the manifesto authors at all. I was quite young when they did their thing, so who knows what was floating around in the space. But I'm going to assume that they didn't think ethics needed to be declared. And sometimes that's a problem that ethical people have, is they assume that everybody else is going to work in an ethical way just like they are, because it's like, yeah, duh, that's how you should do it. But unfortunately, there are folks that do not choose to operate in that manner. So that's my guess assumption on why ethics is not put in place within the manifesto or a Scrum guide or anything like that.
So I would say yes, and I'm guessing too. I wasn't there. They didn't invite me. Damn them, right? I don't ski
Yeah.
anyway. I'd be just sitting in the lodge drinking.
You could like
If
ride a sled down the hill.
No, I'd be drinking in the lodge by the fireplace and probably incoherent by the time they came back off the slopes. Um, I I think it's less so. Yes, what you said, but I think it's less so. I think it's the maturity of our profession. So
Hmm.
if you replace doctor, physician, and said, "Oh, we can trust them. They don't need they don't need any ethical." What is that? The Hippocratic Oath
Yeah.
is an ethics statement. If you right, we trust them all. They'll, they know what to do when they cut you open and take your brain out. So I don't know, right? So that's a mature profession, and what they found over time is great people, well-intentioned people, but every once in a while, some people come in, and having a line of sight on ethics is important. To share those ethical boundaries outside with your clients is important. Social work. My daughter Rhiannon is in social work, and I know social workers, psychiatrists. It's not just physicians; it's folks, but social workers have a really strong connection to ethics. That doesn't mean everyone's ethical. It just means they really try to hammer home, these are our ethics. People sign off on them every year. Doctors do that. There's portals, there's software that actually manages the ethical commitment.
Hmm.
They show the ethical statements to a doctor. They make them review them every year. They make them sign off on them. The International Coaching Federation does this every time I renew. I have to read the ethics and then sign off and literally sign and say, I can lie, but I promise that I will adhere to these ethical statements in any coaching. So I think the maturity of the discipline is a part of it. What do you think? As well as maybe well intentions.
There's a couple things there as you were talking through that jumped in my brain. Number one, those are all professions where the customer is a human. Our profession, customers are human, but not in the same way of there's work being done on / to support that human. So there's not the direct correlation. So I see that as one thing that is a separator. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. I
Yeah.
just, everything you listed fell into that bucket, and software engineering doesn't, but it does. It's kind of weird. Lastly, I don't think putting ethics in the manifesto or the Scrum guide is appropriate, because I think they address a very specific thing. And yes, there are other things that need to happen within an organization to be healthy and happy and growing. But both of those statements, directives, frameworks, whatever you want to call them, are about this is how you can work effectively on a challenging problem with a group of people. Now, you could argue there's like ethical ways that you're going to work with your coworkers, but I feel like that's unsaid, and maybe that's part of the problem. But I don't feel like ethics should be in either of those guides.
I agree with you. So I think Jeff was wrong in that. And I don't even know how strongly he was suggesting it.
Yeah.
He was using those as a backdrop, I think, right? Um, and he did directly say there should be a sixth, Scrum principle or something like that, and it's ethics. I disagree with that view. However, and it's not in those other examples, physicians, but should we have over time developed a clear line of sight view of ethical behavior in our profession? And I would say yes, as a separate document or something we develop as something we agree to. I mean, it's happening. Agile coaching is the Agile Alliance is developing a draft Agile coaching ethics statement that's published. It's out there. I'm actually going to reference some of them maybe in the Metacast today.
Interesting.
And it's out there. I subscribe to it on my Agile Moose website. So one of the things I did, and I do this, I'm not putting this up as an example, but on my Agile Moose, I have a Bob Galen's ethical statement of this is, if I'm coaching you, this is what to expect. So confidentiality, Josh.
Yeah.
Right. Whether we have a contract or not, whether it's stipulated in the contract or not, if you approach me for coaching, part of my inherent basic ethics is I'm going to keep everything we say confidential. Let's say the agreement, our contract expires in a year. I'm going to keep it 5 years from now. No one's going to hear about it. I'm going to, unless their name is Josh Anderson, then I just spill my guts to the entire world. I have an exception in my ethical statement.
That's fair.
But I think having something like that. Now, the sad news with the Agile Alliance is not a lot of people have gotten on board with that. Or, if you look at the Scrum Alliance website, they do have some ethics in dealing, I think, with their clients. There are some ethical statements at the bottom of web pages. Scrum.org has a few things. But there's not a real consistency or a focus on ethics. That's what gets me excited, is the need for that. The other thing is forget the statements, just have the discussions in our profession, like amongst coaches. I mean, forget what the words say. Have these conversations around ethical behavior and unethical behavior, right? Or unethical behavior.
One of the things I'm wrestling with in my brain, which happens a lot, by the way, is I get worried about trying to build silver bullets. And let's make this thing the one place to get all of the answers. And
yeah.
It's like you need that microservices approach to running a company where you have clear, specific, this is how we do this one thing, and it's encapsulated. So there's no ambiguity. It's clear. This is how we operationally deliver software.
Yep.
This is clear how we operationally work as human beings, and expectations and responsibilities and everything that goes along with that. So I get worried about mixing things that are as important as that, because I don't know if they lose their bite, but it starts to muddy the water on, like, okay, what are we talking about here? Like, are we talking about this and this? Because then that opens the door for more discussions and debates and all of that stuff, as opposed to like, this is how we do this. And it's clear, concise, the context is complete, and everybody can go.
So you're talking about the bundling. You're saying don't bundle because okay. I agree with that. So where do ethics belong? I don't think they belong in the Agile Manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they belong in principles of any of the manifestos. Scrum. I don't think they belong in the Scrum Guide.
Right.
I don't think I don't think there is a Kanban guide, but I don't think they belong in the Kanban guide.
Yeah.
I can't now. Scaled Agile Framework, since it is the garbage can that includes everything in the universe related to Agile. Did I say garbage? I shouldn't have said that.
I think you should have used a bigger container than just a can.
Yeah. Since it's the dump truck. So then there should be on the safe site somewhere. There's got to be ethics,
Yeah.
as well as how to eat a Big Mac, right? Everything, an Agile Big Mac should be there.
Okay, so we're in agreement.
Yeah.
We don't like when that happens, but it happens quite often. That ethics are important, but we are making a pretty clear statement that we don't believe it should be a part of the manifesto or any Scrum guides. I get a little nervous about Agile Alliance trying to bake that in because of the things that we talked about the bundling, and then at that point, like, what are you getting? What aren't you getting? I do like
they're not
it for the coaches piece. Like, to me,
Yeah.
that again, because that falls into that collection of, I'm directly working with humans and my goal is to improve them in some manner, however they ask me to help do that. So I get that, but I'm not sure about from a framework perspective.
Let me really quickly give you and get ready to jot down some of the stuff if it resonates with you. But there's topic areas that the coaching ethics focus on. And I'm going to give you a real quick sort of index of them and see which ones you think have more general applicability.
So this is for your interdimensional coaches federation.
No, this is the Agile Alliance.
This is the Agile Alliance one. Okay.
This is the code and just the high level table of contents.
Yep.
So 1, I commit myself to the following: protecting confidentiality, intellectual property, and information security. 2, acting within my ability. 3, introspection and continuing professional development. 4, navigating conflicts of interest. 5, ensuring value in the relationship. 6, upholding social responsibility, diversity, and inclusion. 7, agreeing on boundaries. 8, managing differences in status and power. And 9, responsibility to the profession.
I feel like most of those were a line item in a job description and not a ethical choice.
So
some of them are. I get, but
some of them,
yeah.
I actually disagree. I mean, there may be a few. No, but I mean, do you want to go back through them and decide which ones are in the job description and which ones? I mean, we could do that.
Yeah.
So protecting confidentiality. That's not in a job description.
No.
Acting within my ability, like not being too rambunctious and trying to do something I can't do. Like, I'm not a brain surgeon and I'm going to operate on your brain. So acting on my introspection and continuing profession.
Yeah. That's what you do. What do you?
That's not. It's not in a job description.
I think for a coach to be good, that's something that they would do.
Oh,
I don't think that's an ethical choice. I think that's like, hey, to be good at this profession, you have to check off these boxes. And I'd say at least half of those were things that I felt like, to be good at the profession, those require to be checked. Not like this is an ethical choice of, I'm going to do this because if I don't, I'm evil. I think it's, I want to be good at my job.
Evil. But I want to be a craftsperson. It would be like a plumber saying, there's incompetent plumbers in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And then they could sign a sheet that says, I do all of these things, and they know they don't. And then they're not ethical. They go out there and pretend that they're right. I mean, to my own years ago, I was doing, I shouldn't say, well, I will.
It was decades ago, black and white TV, all that stuff. So
when I was going through college, I did construction work. One of the most horrible things I did is my boss would put me in unskilled. And he asked me once to go into a home. He sold a job and said, you're going to repoint the chimney. And repointing is replacing the mortar, right? Because the mortar gets aged and gets soft. And in my youthful enthusiasm, I started digging out the mortar, and I'm like, well, it's all soft. So I started decomposing the chimney inside this person's house. When I had no skill to rebuild the chimney, and what he said is just take out half the mortar, and you can replace it with new mortar. And I couldn't get the difference, and I took this from this house, from the roof. I decomposed an entire chimney down to the third floor. And then I was like, oh my, I can't fix this.
Yeah.
And so I shouldn't have been there from Jump Street. I should have never even walked into, even though my boss, I should have said no.
I think you have some responsibility there, but I think most of it falls on that boss you had. Like a year ago, I was trying to juggle stuff around in the driveway. I asked my then 15-year-old son to back his sister's car out of the driveway. Why his sister couldn't do that is a whole nother discussion that I may have lost my temper on greatly, but we'll ignore that for now. So I said, Joshua, just back up the car. And he got in the car. He's driven before. He was, working on his temporary license and all that stuff. And he just messed up, and he put it in drive and drove forward into my brand new truck, crunched the bumper. Everything was bad. He was super upset. Felt like he really screwed up. But in reality, and I said this to him, like, it's my fault for putting you in that position. I should not have put you in a spot where your likelihood to fail was higher than it should be. So yes, you made a mistake, but you made a mistake. You didn't do it with malice. You were doing what I asked you to do, and I should not have done that. So I feel like your situation is similar, and it sounds like, again, you were trying to do the right thing. You're like, oh, well, if it's soft.
No, don't take me off the.
Okay.
I was also presenting myself as I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
My boss screwed the pooch. Yes, but I was presenting myself as a professional to the client.
I understand. Okay.
Right. They didn't. I knew I wasn't. So, and even your son, if he had an ethical statement to say, don't do things that you're not, then he could have pushed back on you. Right. He could say, Dad, I am not right. I'm
not comfortable doing that. Right. Yeah.
I'm not comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
What? Right. I could drive, but I'm not quite comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And so you had more, so it's a bit different. But in my case, yes, my boss was on the hook. But you know what? I was the face of things. The client thought I was a professional mason.
Gotcha. Right? Yeah.
And I wasn't. And so I had an ethical dilemma, and I failed in that case. And all that, I don't know if it's a helpful analogy, but that's where I think where the ethics can come in coaching, but I think also in software development. I think some of those statements, we're picking at that one. Don't do something you're unskilled for. Right. I would say that's the same thing. I've done that as a developer. I've done things that I shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
Right. They may have turned out. They may have been deployed.
Yeah.
they may have worked, but I knew in my heart that I was, and thus the ethics. So I think
there's
go ahead.
I want to bounce this off you because one of the things I do want to rotate to in the back half of this podcast is like let's talk about agile examples, or not agile, ethical examples in real life, which you just gave one. One of the things that I am, we'll say, guilty of is having insane confidence in myself and being able to do the fake it until you make it path. And I was faking it until I made it when I first met Bob. There were things I was being asked to do that I hadn't done before, but I knew I could. And might I stub my toe a little bit? Yeah. So I think that also has the potential to cross over into the example that you just gave of when does it become unethical for me to have done that in my past career?
I don't have the answer. One reaction I have is share that with your client.
Yeah.
One of the things I do as a coach, and I don't know if it's directly ethics, but to me, it's acknowledge, be transparent, and be vulnerable, and then have them, like I could have done that same thing with the chimney, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't know what, I should. This is actually interesting because I didn't do that, but I get a little bit down the chimney, and I'm like, you know what? I'm making a mistake. What I did is I kept chipping away at the damn thing. I was like, oh, it'll stop, and it did.
Yeah.
And I realized my incompetency in layers, physically, literally, right? But I could have stopped at the top and talked to the client and say, you know what? I really don't know what I'm doing here. So there's a chance that I will be successful, and there's a chance that I will destroy your chimney, thus destroying your roof, thus causing you $50,000 worth of damage
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Which do you, and do we want to get assistance in here? What call is it for you? And then share that, share the risk, and share that versus hiding it. So I think part of the ethics sometimes, these guiding forces for us,
Mhm.
and what are we making as sole decisions versus shared decisions? I could see a doctor doing the same thing.
Yeah.
There's doctor decisions like that. This has a probability of success, but there's also risk associated with it. How do you want to proceed?
Right.
I want to come back to these statements
Okay.
though,
Okay.
not to read them. Actually,
But
where did I want?
what are we gonna do with them?
So I'm trying to find one. What they did on the website, and we can share this link, Josh.
Mhm.
Oh, here, this is okay. So I'm going to talk about acting within my ability.
Which is kind of what we
So,
just talked about, right?
right.
Yeah.
So, and what they have is they have examples, because this stuff is not binary.
Mhm.
It's not black and white. It's gray. So ethics are guardrails that are interpretive, right? Just like we've been doing. So they have, an example. So they have examples of where it's appropriate. While we're being interviewed to start a position, the hiring sponsor asks how your current organization, the competitor, approaches their agile transformations. They also indicate that they want you to take an identical approach once on board. So how do you handle that, right? This is do you, and they say, it's appropriate for you to terminate the interview because you shouldn't be choosing to reveal proprietary information. What would be inappropriate? In order to help a team gain a better understanding of dynamics during a retro, you leverage tools and techniques from other fields that you have been exposed to, but have no professional qualification. So you offer vague assurances that you understand what you are doing. So you're basically lying, right? I know how to do this. Let me lead you through it. Why is it inappropriate to do that? Because you're leveraging that you are not professionally qualified. Assurances without professional qualifications is a misrepresentation. So one of the things I like,
mean, that's a gray one for me because I feel like innovation gets stifled. Now, the assurances part is the key word there of perpetrating. Yes, I know what I'm doing, and so follow me. Yes, that's an issue. But to the gray part, I think it's totally within reason to say, hey, I saw this at my last job, who they did blah 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 blah, and it worked really well. What do you guys think about trying that?
and
I
that's
want to shut
totally,
that down.
yeah. So I think there's a lot of gray area. What they did is they had ethical statements. I'm not trying to nitpick the words, but then what they did is said, here's some examples of an appropriate application of this. Not exhaustive, and here's some examples
Mhm.
from our point of view of inappropriate. So they're trying to draw some boundary conditions. I think it's actually saying, if you want to do your ethics, do the same thing, at least in your head. So for example, if you're leading an agile team, intellectual property, what I'm not going to tell you what to do, but copyright protection, intellectual property, what's appropriate ethical behavior, maintain confidentiality, what's obviously inappropriate, sharing it with a competitor, sharing it without acknowledging the copyright might be an example. Okay, now you've established, so you're starting to establish the Josh Anderson ethics for your role, for leadership roles. And you could extrapolate that to other people, but just really looking at it from a personal perspective. You were going to say something.
Yeah, this is all good stuff, and it's stuff people should be thoughtful about, should define their ethics, kind of like what
I hear
you
a
talked
buck
about.
coming.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a big one, just like in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. If anybody remembers that scene, that's a great one.
I do.
When he asks the girl, "What's your big butt?" and and then her boyfriend's outside, and her boyfriend's massive and chases poor Pee-wee all over the place. Anyways,
gosh, there's the character from the past, Pee-wee Herman.
Yeah, but that's still like, oh no, he's doing the dance. For those of you that don't only get the audio, now is the time. Look at the minutes and seconds. Go to YouTube and go to that same time frame and watch Bob do the Pee-wee Herman dance. It's as good as you would expect. I still don't think it's appropriate for the Agile Alliance to define operational norms for
developers.
Employees. Yeah.
Or
whatever. Yeah.
I don't think that is Jeff's point.
Yeah.
I mean, he was right. Or if it was Jeff's point, I'm trying to twist it to say ethics, and you can disagree with this. I think we don't talk about ethics enough in technology organizations, agile organizations context enough. I actually think we talk about it hardly at all.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think it would, my hypothesis is it might be useful for us to do some of the things, us being professionals in companies or across front-end developers, if there's a group, to discuss ethics, to establish ethics, to talk about the gray area of ethics. And we could use the Agile Alliance ethical statement for coaching as not even a model, but as an example that we could borrow some areas from. I think it's a shame that we don't do that. And I wonder if that creates some of our problems. For example, product quality, lateness, like the fact that we don't have ethics that empower you to push back on an estimate. I'm giving you pressure and you say 1 point. Your default answer in every backlog refinement is 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. When you're just trying to tell 1 point to please Bob and to get him to shut up and get off my back, right? And to get out of here. And it'll wash out in the end because we'll be late. We'll screw the customers. Maybe we'll go out of business. But 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. Just shut up.
But you lived through that meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think, unfortunately, it goes even a level deeper in that there's not enough time spent establishing, discussing like pre-ethics stuff. Just like this is who we are. This is how we operate. Like the number of places where there's core values that are on a Confluence page or up on a wall or wherever your company keeps it, but that's it. That's all they are. So it doesn't drive consistent behavior across the organization. There are so many engineers that I know that have very ambiguous to no description of what they're expected to do and what good looks like. So I think not only are we bad at ethics, but we're bad at even the like sub ethics part of just like, this is the context and clarity that you need to do your job. There's so many companies that whiff on that then expecting them to talk about ethics, holy crap, like they aren't even halfway there yet, which is like, it's a double trouble problem.
Is that like ethics is like practice? Are you talking about practice.
Yes, I am. I should go get my T-shirt.
Exactly. I agree with you, and it's one of those things we maybe another aspect of this is bringing the profession into Agile, and bringing professionalism into Agile, bringing professionalism into software development. I have always felt that software development lacked craft, not holistically, but in many, in a large percentage of organizations and people, down to software developers. I've met a handful in my career, probably 10 to 20% of the developers I've worked with really cared about continuous improvement and continuous learning, and maybe 80% just eroded over time or didn't give and I looked at it as a professional responsibility. Maybe you could say an ethical response. That's the way I've always looked at it. That's the way I look at coaching, and my Agile career. But that's rare. But bringing that professionalism in, and there's no guarantees. But in some disciplines, like I talk about, in physicians, in dentistry, in social work, it's not a guarantee. But the professionalism drives this more holistic focus on what are our ethics, and if we define them, let's hold ourselves to account for that, right? That's an anchor that we take seriously, and I think it is a missing thing for us. Now the question, do we need it or not? I'm less bullish on putting it in the manifesto. I'm very bullish on what the Agile Alliance is doing with Agile coaching. I mean, I'm 100% behind that. And I can't tell you how many coaches they don't talk about. It's not even talking about it. It's almost like they're ethics free. I'm not saying they're unethical, but it's like, we'll just figure it out, right? Just trust us. We're coaches. We know what we're doing.
So I'm going to dip my toe into something that may get me in trouble. Because it's
with me or with the audience?
With the audience, because it's political-ish.
Yeah. Be careful. Be careful, Gunga Din.
Yeah. So, something that I believe to be true is that one of the underlying challenges ethics has is that we are a capitalist society. So businesses, people, industries are rewarded for generating the most money. And then you have folks that come in with ethics and challenge a lot of the things that are being done to achieve the whatever has to happen to get the stock price to X, Y, and Z. So I think that's a headwind that our country has created for ethics and for Agile coaching, in that it can be perceived as something that will slow you down. And from the current trajectory that you're on, you have to slow down to speed up and things like that. Seeing people with the patience to enable that and really allow that to happen within companies is pretty rare. And when they do, it's been successful, but so often leaders are so hesitant to do things like that because of the capital. Both, and I get it, right? Like, I've run businesses before where it's like, okay, so how are we going to pay for this next year? And gosh, we got to start fundraising again and get the Series B or the Series C or whatever it is to be able to achieve the lifelong mission. So capital drives so many things that it definitely makes it harder, not impossible, but it makes it more difficult for folks to do the ethical thing.
Well, that was Jeff's, if you remember that example he gave, he talked about it during a live company all hands. An engineer asked the CEO of a very large company, Fortune 500 company, whether we should be selling surveillance software to China.
Right. Yeah.
He did not give the answer. He did not say whether that employee had a job the next day. Right. Exactly. That's a gnarly question, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure, there's revenue on the table, but ethically, should we be doing that?
Right. And they're a Fortune 500 company, but like, if you don't do that deal, is the company done? So then you're threatening, the say it's 9,000 people instead of 90,000, then you're putting 9,000 people out of work. And so then you've got to weigh that, but then, there's a lot of variables there to weigh in, and being a leader is hard because stuff like that comes up more often than you think. And that's why finding good leaders is challenging, because it does take, courage in a lot of different ways to say no when it should be said, even though it will put you at risk.
But there's the transparency. This isn't disagreeing with you, Josh. There's the transparency in that case of, as that CEO, just being clear. You know what? So you're right. We crossed an ethical boundary there, and we're going to withdraw from that contract. Or or you don't understand. We will sell surveillance software to China. It is within our ethic, whatever. So being transparent about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
And the ethics brings up the discussion. Instead of having stuff happen, it's like, let it surface in the light of day. And then let the employees decide, do I want to work for a company that has those ethics? Let the customers decide. Let other customers outside of China decide, do I want to work? So very often the ethics, these ethics statements or the boundary, they're invisible. And I think what the ethics statements do is they help make them more transparent, and then folks can make decisions. I think Stephen said something. Ethics are borderline topic like religion and politics. That's why they're not discussed. I would agree with that. They're situational. They're nuanced. They're gray. They're hard to deal. I mean, they're uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable right now in this episode, and it's not because I don't have my special seat pillow on. It's I'm just generally uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think what has to happen, which is why it doesn't, is it's uncomfortable, and you have to be transparent and explain the why around the decisions that are made. And that is uncomfortable, just like Bob in his chair, in a bunch of different ways. But also, it's not easy to have the discussion because there's likely going to be other smart people that will present cases that disagree with the direction that's been taken. And it's difficult, again, but not impossible. And as we've said in a million different ways, that transparency wins.
One thing I would recommend for Metacasters, and I'm trying to channel you, Josh, because you always do it. You do a great job of trying to go to actions for the Metacasters, for the listeners. I would challenge every listener to quietly grab a piece of paper, either electronic or physical, and think about your ethic. This is what I did. When I wrote down my Agile Moose ethics, I quietly sat down. I actually didn't reference anything else. And I'm like, what do I believe in? Where am I going to hold the line, etc.? And what are my principles? What are values that are important to me? And I just made a list, a bulleted list. And then I just kept it for a while. These are my ethics. So, for example, Agile Coach. Now, my lens was Agile coaching, but it was also leadership coaching, etc. And one of my lenses, one of my ethics statements is I'm not going to divulge personal information to leaders. So, for example, if I get invited into an organization and I'm coaching the organization, and the people paying my bills ask me, who should I hire? Who should I fire? Who needs it? Right. If they ask for performance data, I will never give it to them. I would rather walk and be fired than divulge. This is not confidentiality. This is client confidentiality, meaning the people I'm coaching confidentiality. And that's important to me. And I actually don't care if you have that ethical statement, Josh. You're entitled to do what you want. But so what I'm challenging the Metacasters to do is to look inside yourself and just get a sense of who are you and what are your ethics. And I think that exercise is a valuable one for all of us. It gives us boundary conditions. It gives us importance conditions and things like that. It gives us judgment conditions. Is that a fair ask, Josh? What do you think?
Yeah, because it's not that it can change. So don't feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you've got to like spend, eons getting it pixel perfect. You don't, because you're not gonna. But it gives everyone an anchor when difficult situations come up.
I'm sorry. No, I'm reacting to Steven's just ask ChatGPT.
I mean, like I said in the chat, like that's a total fact.
I know.
It's an anchor so that you're not reactive when something comes up. You've pre-thought about it. You have something in your back pocket, and you're not scrambling when a difficult situation comes up that may challenge the ethics that you have. Actually, knowing the ethics you have is step one. So rather than trying to figure out what they are in the moment and make the right decision, that's harder. That's all it is. It's just harder. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but you definitely set yourself up for more success when difficult moments arise by doing what Bob is asking you to do. So we would like everybody to mail those 3x5 cards to beautiful Cary, North Carolina.
I knew you were going to do that. Don't. No, they're private. It's a private exercise. Yeah. And I think Josh and Stephen in the notes in the chat, it's a key thing. It's valuable to do it before it happens. And they can change. It's not just, it's like a retrospective. Just going through the process can give you like sort of directional clarity of where am I? Mm-hmm. So there's no judgment. You don't have to share them with anyone.
Right.
It's just that sort of your ethics. Now, if you're part of a team, then you could round it up just if you want to divulge that. And it doesn't even have to be the shared. It could be, now, what are our ethics? Mm-hmm. Right? As a leadership team, right? And everyone keeps their own personals private, but do we have any shared ethics that we want to? What are our boundary conditions? What are we going to hold us to? What is our true north when it comes to ethics?
Amen. Fork.
Are we done, Josh? Fork?
Yeah, get that big giant fork.
Hey, then let's get out of here. All right. So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina, where the sun is shining and the birds are singing.
And even more beautiful, Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina, where not only the birds are singing, they are dancing. The flowers are singing as well. It's like a Disney musical here.
And I've got rabbits. I've got to top you. And I've got bunnies, rabbits hopping in the lawn. I do, actually. And
playing have worms
and frolicking.
I have worms ballroom dancing with birds right now.
All right. Now, I'm Bob Galen.
And I'm Josh Anderson.
Shake
and bake.
Take care, y'all. I think my rabbit trumps your worm. Oh my God.
Yeah. Wow.
I